people used to send beat CD. And I just kept being like, Shaka, who's Kanye West? I like all of his beats. And he was like, it's a kid from Chicago. And he used to put his number on the CD. And I just randomly called it one day. And he answered. If you get in the studio with Kanye, you're going to feel like he's worth $1 million. And I was just like, man, where'd you get this sample from? Because the beat goes dun, 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 dun. And I was like, what reggae, where'd you get this? Is Bob Marley, whatever. He shows me that he had actually chopped up Under the Boardwalk by the Beach Boys.
Really appreciate you supporting the podcast. Thank you. One really easy way to continue supporting the podcast is by getting your music distributed for free with tolost.com. Just use the code @odds when you signed up for 3 free months of premium music distribution. So get your instrumental albums up, get your singles, your albums up. Two Lost will distribute your music on all the platforms. And if you decide you want to stop using them after the free trial is ended, your music will stay on the platforms. They won't delete it. www.tolost.com. Use the code @odds. Exactly. I feel like me and 20 lost a lot of great conversation, but we'll try to bring it.
Okay, sorry, y'all.
No, we were just catching up. Okay, good morning, everyone. I got Erin back, and so she feels like a special guest. I also have another special ATLian as a guest, my good friend I-20, who this is like a reunion show. It's not just a reunion with Erin, it's a reunion with 20. We're catching up, kind of talking about how long it's been, but the time suck of the pandemic just made it feel like we had seen each other a lot more recently than we actually have. So I don't even want to think about that, but how are you doing? How have you been?
I'm doing really well. I'm very grateful. It's good to see you. So I'm excited about this. I don't do interviews, so this is cool.
Well, this is not an interview. It's just like a recorded conversation. So think of it as a wiretap. I don't know where to start. I do want to just ask a general question. 20, you've been in the music business for a while. You've had not only multiple hit songs, but multiple record deals and a lot of experience touring, etc. What was something about the music business that surprised you as it happened?
What a good question. I did not realize prior to going on my music journey how invested people desire to be in aspects of you outside of the music. When I was growing up, I didn't really care what LL Cool J was doing when he wasn't rapping. I didn't care who he was dating. I didn't care what he was doing. I wasn't somewhere saying, I hope Rakim was in the grocery store where I can meet him and shake his hand. And I also want to know, I didn't know how invested people were in the idea of, I want to know who the artist is personally, because I kind of grew up just kind of admiring the skill or the talent and wanting to emulate that. So I think that I was shocked when, people really wanted to know more about my personal life or talk to me about my personal life. I was taken back by that. Not even saying this positive or negative, just I don't think I was aware of how invested people were in that.
Yeah, now it's all personal. Would you say that was a misconception, or were fans truly different back then?
Another good question. I think that fans were different. Now, I'm not going to say that people didn't always want to know maybe what their favorite celebrity or person was doing. And I don't think I'm somebody's favorite celebrity. I'm merely saying, but I do think now with there being so much more access and there being such a tangible path to speaking to someone, there is a lot more investment in, well, what does Payne eat for breakfast? I don't know if you thought about that in the early 90s and stuff like that, because you saw artists as something that lived inside the TV, for lack of a better term.
I feel like post 90s, when all the indie rap stuff started really taking off, and now there was less physical space between you and your favorite rappers, and there was more. Like traditionally, we didn't know of a rapper until they're on Priority Records and they're on MTV, and then in the late 90s, early 2000s, we could see their journey because the indie rap scene was huge, and we were, meeting these rappers in person, and it felt like the veil was lifted. And I think that's good and bad, but I feel like that that notion of proximity to your favorite rapper has extended now quite a bit. I don't know if you saw that clip of Lil Baby, and he's getting some backlash for that, where he's sarcastically waving at a fan because you know what I'm talking about, where he goes, "I said hi 10 times. What do you want me to do at this point?" And people are like, "Man, he changed with fame." I'm like, what do you want him to do at this point?
I've been in the club before. I remember kind of before we took off watching, I don't know if you remember MTV True Life, but not too long before Luda had to really took off. I remember watching this episode of MTV True Life where Jay-Z was talking about how insane it was that he would go in the club and there's a shot of him in the club and the music is playing, but the entire crowd in the club is just looking at him and Benny Siegel. They're not doing anything, but everyone is just fixated and looking at them. And he talked about how bizarre it was to go somewhere and you just become the fixation or the focal point of kind of what everyone is doing and what they have their attention on. So when I saw that Lil Baby clip, it made me think on that, where, you know, he's acknowledged the person, he's spoken, he's waved, and they're still like, hey, keep looking. At what point does it get odd to you too?
Well, speaking of odd, we covered this in a previous episode. Were people throwing stuff on stage when you were performing like they are today?
Not at the level, but yeah, for some reason, there's always somebody who, I don't know if they think it's funny. I don't know if they get dared into doing it, but I'm not going to name the spots, but we've been in a couple of pretty big brawls because somebody throws something on the stage and you just happen to randomly see the person who threw it, you know, you jump into the crowd, which looking back now is insane to do. But yeah, I don't know. It seems like it's happening more regularly now, but that has always been something that has happened.
I feel like there needs to be like a no-fly list for concert attendees. Like, if you throw something at a concert and it's a Live Nation venue, it's like you're banned from all Live Nation venues, you know, because it's like, it's getting out of hand, like even with Cardi B with it recently happening. And then they immediately tried to sue her. They tried to bring an assault case against her. I think they thought they do that and then it's going to turn into a settlement. But the judge was like, there's not substantial evidence for me to say that you were assaulted, which I think is like a really convenient way for the judge to dismiss it. There's evidence, but it's like, yo, should we file an assault case against you first too? Just because it didn't hurt, you still threw something at me, you know, and I don't know how much, I'm sure the mic hurt, but you know what I'm saying? I think it's super weird. I think it's weird for me because I feel like that's what's happening to me right now. Somebody does something, like they'll do something on the internet or whatever, and then I react and they're like, you shouldn't have reacted that way. And I'm like, I'm confused. You shot first. I retaliated and I have bigger guns and now I'm the one who's the problem. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think it's a cowardly move. I think a lot of people are super immature. And I think that also plays into the people's fixation with other people in their life. I'm a curious person and I like knowing about what other people are doing, but it's more so like people that I admire or, you know what I'm saying? I'm a way bigger fan of music industry professionals, like the business side, than I am of any artist. And that's no disrespect to the artist. That's just the field that I'm in. So I have, you know, I see a claim in that. And I'm like, I want to learn and figure out these people. But I think, and this is not to say that everybody who is that interested in artists, but I think a lot of people lack like maturity or like an understanding of themselves. So they just spend their time focused on other people and inquiring about other people because they're trying to figure out who they are and who they want to be. So it's almost like they want to reflect what other people are doing. So that's why they're so curious. So I don't know. I think it's just such a weird, it's starting to feel dangerous because it feels like everybody is like, in a way, like a bit of a stalker or a voyeur. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's like you say that and people are like, you're tripping, but it's like, what is social media but to be a voyeur of everybody? Like people get upset when celebrities don't post every day or all the time. And I'm like, how weird is that? like, why are you upset? Like you haven't been on the internet. Or when people are like, hey guys, so I took a break. And I'm like, I didn't even notice you were here. Like, but I don't know. I'm a little bit older. I'm in my 30s. I grew up, but I grew up pre-internet, and then like I was one of the first generations to have the internet, like in high school and college. And I'm still not as connected, I think, as most people to where I feel like it's a necessity. So I do feel like the industry, the world is in a really unique place.
Did that appeal to the psychologist in you, 20?
Maybe. I think that one of the most unique things about fame is that there's an odd oxymoronic component to it, in the sense that people feel like to whom much is given, much is expected. So that you hold a certain level of responsibility to be better than people, but you can't think you're better than someone. You need to be better, but you better not think you're better. I'm going to hold you to a higher standard, but don't you ever think that that means you are better than me. If you've ever gone somewhere and 5 people compliment someone on a shirt about the shirt they're wearing, there's going to be one person that's like, I hate that shirt. I don't even know if they actually hate the shirt. They're just annoyed that 5 people before them said that they like that shirt. And that's kind of what I learned. There needs to be a person who feels like I'm the antagonist here. I've got to be the person that's going against the grain. I got to be the person this whole thing is silly. Screw that guy, screw that girl. They're not that great. And I think that that's kind of their personality, is just to be the person that they feel is keeping it real, or being honest, or being objective. And I'm going to say something. So when you respond, they feel like, hey, you're attacking me. I didn't realize until maybe the past like 8 years that a lot of people's general mentality is, if you've got A, you shouldn't care that I've said something. Because you've got this. If I had this, I wouldn't care if somebody would say something. Yeah, you would. You would, because even if you have this, you're still a person. And if someone is saying something insulting to you and that you see it, your natural thing is to be like, I'm going to respond. Not even respond necessarily to engage it beyond, hey, man, you can't just say anything you want to me. But I don't know, man. I don't. You know me, people.
Yeah. But then you add in the anonymity factor, because there are a lot of people who will just do these drive-by comments where like, and I'm not a violent guy at all. But someone just to test, every now and then, like someone recently, and I know where they came from. I'm not going to get into this producer beef thing that's going on, but somebody just did a little drive-by comment. I'm like, but would you say that to me in person? Like, would you actually say that to me in person? Would you get violent with me in person based on what you're saying? And they're like, oh, save your energy, bro. And it's like, that's what I thought. So why the internet, it's just so many layers of toxicity, where here's a guy that wants to say something that's unnecessary, doesn't add value to any conversation. He wants to get under my skin and he wants a response, but he wants anonymity. But also what I feel like is the people who live as cowards on the internet also want fame and credit, because you're absolutely right. This role of antagonist has become their identity. If you can't create music, if you can't create art, if you can't make an impact that way, then you have to basically be antimatter. You have to be the person that destroys. And the easiest way to destroy is to just criticize all the time gratuitously. So the internet's weird. But speaking of things that are weird, you had an album called Blood in the Water that just didn't ever come out. But one of the coolest stories that you told me way back about making that album was, well, there were a lot of dope stories. I wish, maybe someday it'll leak, but Kanye was on that album. He produced at least one record on that album, right?
Actually, he did the Kanye sessions were for self-explanatory. And then I was going to try to move them over to Blood and Water because they didn't make the debut album.
Oh, okay. Oh, why didn't they, who rejected? Who made that call to reject the Kanye
Nobody
record?
rejected it. It was that'll be a whole nother 3-hour saga of the idea at that time was the new producer is quote unquote asking for too much. You got to keep in mind, this was the days when the mentality was producers should be happy that we're using his beat. Here's X, you take that, we're using your beat, have a good life. Kanye just blazed a lot of those producers. They were some of the first producers for real to kind of be like, no, it's a privilege for you to be on my beat. Not to me, because we had a good working relationship, but here goes my price. I'm standing firm and my price because I know this beat I gave you is a hit record. You got to keep in mind the 2 records that I did with Kanye, he also did the hook. So he was, very much like, this is out of here. And 20 is my guy, so I'm just charging you X. But DTP had another perception of it, I'm going to say.
Do you remember what the numbers were? I mean, you don't have to share them, but did they seem reasonable?
To me, given that you got to keep in mind, this is like 05 Kanye, 06 Kanye. So this is like Rockefeller. He's basically the in-house producer, killing everything. I met him I think the story of how I met Kanye is even crazier than the fact that we built a good relationship. I met Kanye because at the DTP office, Shaka used to have a stack of CDs that were beats that people were saying. Okay, so 100 years ago, people used to send beat CDs. Back in the 1800s, they used to send us beat CDs, and you would take the beat CD and kind of go through it. So Shaka would have on his desk, he'd have like a stack this big of CDs, and we would all go in his office and steal them, and just try to find what we could. And I went in his office one day, took a whole bunch of CDs, didn't like anything, but I kept finding myself going back whenever I take CDs, liking beats from a guy I called Kane. I was like, who's Kanye West? And at that time, he had an LA number. I remember it was 818. And I just kept being like, Shaka, who's Kanye West? I like all of his beats. And he was like, it's a kid from Chicago. He's starting to do stuff with Rockefeller. And he used to put his number on the CD. And I just randomly called it one day, and he answered. And we ended up talking for a minute, and he was rapping on the phone, and everything. But he was just really down to earth and really, really cool. And I don't know why, but we just became cool off of that conversation. So by the time he kind of took off, was not too long after Move Bitch was really, really skyrocketing. He kind of is taking off as well. And then I'm featured on more stuff. So we're bumping into each other. And then we finally was just like, I was out in LA because you remember I was signed to Capital Priority, and he was living in LA at the time. And we just kind of connected.
Because I'm from Atlanta, so I know your work. Now I'm like hearing some of your hit records play through my head. Can you run down some of the work that you've done and why? And then we can go back into this story because I still want to hear about what the number was and all of that. But I think people need to know what you've done because, wow.
Yeah, I guess I'll do it more like the story. Because I don't even think I've ever actually on camera said the whole kind of story, but I'll give it a condensed version. One of my best friends in the whole world is a girl named Toya. And back in the day, it used to be a situation when you were 15, 16 years old, if your homegirl exchanged number with somebody, then you all would be on the phone 3-way or what have you. And my homegirl Toya was really good friends with another childhood friend of mine named Alita, and they had met a guy named Chris at a place called Shannon Mall in Atlanta. And he was working at a Sears there. And they just kept being like, you need to meet this Chris guy. He's like you, he's obsessed with rap. He just busts out rapping all day. He's always rapping, need to meet him. At this time, it sounds silly to say at my age, I'm really in the streets and I'm just like, I don't really want to meet anybody who's not from my side or anything. I'm cool on them. My best friend Toya is like, no, you need to meet him. You need to meet him. I'm like, no, thank you. She just randomly puts him on the phone one day. I'm not anticipating speaking with him. And he just starts rapping. And if you are a rapper, another rapper can't get off 2 or 3 verses for you to be like, all right, now I'm about to say something. So then I started rapping, and I thought he was so good, especially considering we were really, really young. And I got his phone number. He got my phone number. we remained kind of cool, but just kind of passing cool. He randomly told us one day, he was like, hey man, they're gonna have a new radio station in Atlanta. It's Hot 97. It's gonna be like the one in New York. I'm gonna try and get a job up there. Like, you're not gonna get a job, you're a kid. They're not gonna give you a job. At this time, we're like 18. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna try. And he did it. He got an internship up there. And at that time, I was in another group, and he was like, come be in my group with me and a friend from high school named Fate. And I was like, nah, I'm in my little group. But he gets on the radio, does the Future Flavors thing. He used to be a radio host. And because he was a teen, they could only host teen club stuff. So it used to be a club on the side of town where I'm from called a Gate. It's in Decatur. And they were robbing people. So they would go up there and they would just rob various rappers, rob various people who were hosted. And me and Chris got cool because I'd be like, hey man, I know the dudes that's robbing up there at the Gate. Let us get in with you. You're going to be straight. And so we used to start going up there with him. We just wanted to get in the club free. And we just really built a really good friendship. I unfortunately made a silly mistake, went to jail, came out of jail, and he had just gotten a little apartment. And he was like, man, just come move in with me. And I moved in with him and Fate on the South Side. And that we just kind of became really, really close. And we tried the original route. We recorded demos. Another crazy story, because Shaka and Chris was on the radio. Shaka used to be on the radio from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. The program director at the time was a woman named Mary Catherine. So when she would leave, we recorded all our demos in the B studio up at Hot 97. So we would be up there recording studios with DJ Nabs, recording demos, trying to get them done. And the feedback at that time, every time we were trying to put out music, was like, this is weird. That was what everybody was saying. Because keep in mind, this is the boom of crunk. And we're not doing crunk. We're like rapping. We're using organic beats. We're obviously very different. And so the feedback at that time was just like, y'all are weird. This is weird. I don't get it. This is weird. But Shaka, to his credit, kept being like, don't change anything about what y'all do. You know, it's not y'all fault that they don't get it. Someone will get it. We randomly made a song called Catch Up one night randomly. All this drinking gonna catch up, all this smoking gonna catch up. And somehow Jay Prince heard it. And he put us on a compilation, Realest Niggas Down South. And he flew us to Houston. And we thought we were going to sign with Rap A Lot. So the first time we ever thought we were going to sign, we thought it was going to be at Rap A Lot. Well, he flies us down to Houston. Deal never materializes. But we remained cool with Jay Prince throughout the whole time because he was a real solid dude. Next time we thought we were going to sign, Chris makes a song called Fat Rabbit. Timbaland puts it on a solo album that he has. And he says he's creating a label called Z-Man Records. And he was like, I'm going to put y'all on Z-Man. Don't worry about anything. Z-Man Records never comes to fruition. So in the most random way, Chris gets an idea from a guy named Jook, who was a producer from College Park, who him and his friends had put out an independent album. The name of their crew was Player Circle. And in that crew was 2 Chainz and Dollar Boy. I met them 98. And Chris was like, I want to put out an independent album. Let's just see what happens. Because we kept getting rejected. We tried So Def. We couldn't get anything. And true story, we're all a group at this time. But on this demo, Luda says, let's all record one solo song. We all record our solo song. Luda's solo song was What's Your Fantasy? So if you ever hear the song What's Your Fantasy, you're going to notice that it's really just a loop. And the reason why it's just a loop is the beginning of What's Your Fantasy was the intro of Fate's solo song that Luda heard something in it and asked Bangladesh to just repeat it and just like loop that little intro. And that's why What's Your Fantasy is, since it's he makes What's Your Fantasy, and Shaka was like, this is a hit. And we all agreed. We was like, no, this is a hit. Let's try to push this. Asked Mary Catherine, she was kind enough to put it in the mix. And she was like, if it does well in the mix, fine, but this is basically your only shot. It takes off. We just wanted to make the rent back because we all put a little money in for the independent album. Ended up selling 50,000 copies. So we went from begging for a record deal to Shaka and Chris being like, man, I don't want no record deal. I want a record label. And at that time, Leo Cohen had just asked Scarface to create what he was calling Def Jam South. And Shaka said, we'll do a deal with you, but Def Jam South needs to just be DTP. It's the only way we'll sign with you. And they agreed. So the irony is that no one else ever came out on Def Jam South besides Jeezy, who we had always been cool with. We just ended up becoming Def Jam South, disturbing the peace. And pretty much everything after that is history, man.
That's incredible. You had a song with I feel like you had a song with 2 Chainz. It was like Dim Guns or something like that. Yeah, right?
That's Juicy J from 3 6 Mafia.
Okay. Really?
Yeah, that's Juicy J did that beat.
Wow. And then I remember you were on was it Get the Fuck Back, right? Yeah. And then Fighting in the Club.
Produced by Salam Remy.
Oh wow.
Yeah. One of his first time working with a Southern artist.
Wow, super cool. That's like such a killer story. It's like to know the history of how y'all moved and everything. And that's back when 2 Chainz was Titty Boy and Mr. Collin Park. I remember getting those mixtapes out of the gas station. You know, that's crazy. Wow.
Let me pick up on, because you're shouting out a lot of producers. I feel like you were the first person to actually get me to accept the term type beats.
Yeah,
because I used to kind of get offended, and you were like, "Hey, why are you getting offended by this?" Actually, you asked me that question multiple times about a lot of different things. But now I'm basically living off of that term,
living off the
So
I had to try to break down to you why we say type beat. I even came to your defense one time on Twitter because they were trying to come for the neck of producers who do type beats, and I was like, "This is a stupid argument."
Yeah, because this was happening in the industry before the internet, right?
Way before. And I thought that it was so stupid that there were so many people trying to suggest that all of you guys, these incredible producers, these incredible creators, was getting all this backlash. Like, you're not an actual producer because you're just making type beats. We should tell her this story. When Payne and I first connected, the type beat terminology, when a rapper used to go to the studio, all the way back when we were going in the 90s to the 2000s, as a rapper, you don't know anything about beats, BPMs, any of those type of things. So what you literally would do is you'd meet Payne, and Payne would be like, "What are you looking for?" And you would say, "I don't know, man, like a RZA type beat. I don't know, man, like a Metro Boomin type beat." You meant it more like in the vein of this producer, in this sound, I'm hearing this type of energy. So you just use the term to kind of bridge the gap between a producer who knew all of the technical sonic aspects of a beat and you as a rapper who didn't know that. And I think people heard that term and mislabeled it as if someone's sitting around listening to Alchemist and then trying to mimic what the Alchemist does.
Yeah, and I mean, now I'm a defender of that term.
Okay to convert. I used beats to get Salam to make the beat to the song with me and Young Buck, How the Hell You Robbed Us, Gonna Rob. I used it when he and I started working on Blood in the Water because he was the executive producer. I was like, I need like a Southern like anthem. And me and Young Buck had gotten really, really cool because we had toured with G-Unit the year before. And I made him listen to Cheese and Dope by on Project Pat. He had never heard anything by Project Pat. And he absolutely loved the song. And we heard that part and he chopped it up. I said, I need a Juicy J type beat.
Okay, I'm gonna jump around a little bit.
Wait, we got to get the number for the.
Oh, my bad. Yeah.
No. I'm not giving out that number.
But you said it was reasonable. You feel like you should have. They should have paid it
for Kanye. If you get, and I firmly believe this for Payne, if you get in the studio with Kanye, you're gonna feel like he's worth $1 million because he just kind of takes over, but in a way that you are very receptive to. He really knows the person he's working with. And so for me, I thought it was a reasonable number. It was the first time in my young career at that time that I had worked with a producer that had completely taken over, but I liked what they were doing and what the notes he was giving me, and what, other than Pharrell, the notes that he was giving me and the things to say.
So he was really produced. I mean, Kanye, I've never met him, but I imagine he's just nonstop throwing ideas.
He came in the session. Now, again, I don't like it when rappers try to say he's like this. I have no idea. We have built a friendship by the time I'd actually gotten in the studio, and he legitimately liked me as a rapper. So if that has something to do with it, maybe, I don't know. But by the time I got in the session, he was very excited, and he's constantly like, and we need to add this, and we should do this. Before then, every time I had worked with a producer, somebody put on a beat, and then the producer was like, "You using that one?" Yeah. Okay. This is the first time somebody's going to the keyboard, pressing some shit, going back to the drum machine. What about, producing the record? And it just made me very, very energetic. And I really hope that one day I can get those songs. I know Shaka has them and put them out, because I really, really, one of the songs that he did for me, I made a song kind of almost like in a reggae vein, because that's what I thought it was. And I was just like, man, where'd you get this sample from? Because the beat goes dun 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 and I was like, what reggae? Where'd you get this? Bob Marley, whatever. He shows me that he had actually chopped up Under the Boardwalk by the Beach Boys. So what I was hearing is actually Under the Boardwalk. But he had chopped the sample up so much that I didn't even recognize the record.
So, okay, I was afraid the songs were gone, but if Shaka has them, then
I'm assuming he does. He don't lose anything. He got a vault. Shaka got a vault of probably about a minimum of a good 50, 60 DTP songs that didn't make albums, or Luda songs that didn't go here, guest appearances from various artists that we didn't put out. So who knows?
I have a story you'll appreciate, and it leads into another question. And you'll appreciate it because you know my parents. But I was at Dick's the other day, and my mom looks at me and goes, "Oh, why don't you get a job here? It would be good for your fitness, and maybe they get insurance." And she was serious. And she asked about you, by the way, so she'll be happy that I had this conversation. And it's like, I'm 15 years into my music career. Anyway, how did your parents, because I know your parents were not even first generation, they were immigrants, they were business owners, they valued education. You were in college at the time when DTP started blowing up. How did they feel about your music career before and after the mainstream success?
They still hate it. My parents hate rap music. They think it's nonsense. They hated it when I was trying to do it. Here's a great story, and then I'll answer your question more. To me, it really, really answers your question. Move Biscuits nominated for a Grammy. And as I'm coming home after we get notified that the Move Bitch is nominated for a Grammy, and I'm ecstatic. I'm ecstatic at the idea that I might win a Grammy. And I call my mom and I'm like, "Mom, I got nominated for a Grammy. One of my songs is nominated for a Grammy." She said, "Oh," and I ended up cutting her yard that day. That was the extent of her interest in me possibly winning a Grammy. When I got over there, she asked me to cut the grass. My parents are African. In their mind, success is an attorney or a doctor. Despite the fact that I, one point in time, was paying my mom's bills, bought her a car, bought her all types of stuff, she still felt like I wasted my life. That's just the idea of African parents. I don't know.